From CBS News in Washington, this is the CBS News Night Watch. If a photograph steals a little piece of a person's soul, then Patricia Shamroy Shaw has the souls of dozens of the nation's female politicians. We'll meet her still ahead on Night Watch.
Welcome back. Back in the 60s, Patricia Shamroy Shaw was a political activist, but her interest waned. Recently, though, it was rekindled, not by political action, but by political photography. Shaw, the daughter of Academy Award-winning cinematographer Leon Shamroy, traveled across the country photographing women politicians. The result is a show called There's a Woman in the House, American Women in Politics. It's now on display at the Los Angeles Photography Center. Patricia Shamroy Shaw is here with us in Washington, and welcome, Pat.
Thank you.
Did your father have a lot of influence in your going into the photography profession?
Well, I never picked up a camera until after my father died.
Is that right?
So perhaps I was intimidated by his greatness, you know.
But you have copied some of his techniques. I mean, you do black and white, which he was famous for.
Yes, I guess maybe you get it in your genes, you know, and you grow up learning to look at things visually.
And you have been looking at women in politics visually for some time. But before that, you were a political activist yourself, you said. Why did you get tired of it?
Well, I was very active in the Vietnam War movement, and then when my children were young, I worked, you know, lobbied at the school board and went to Sacramento on issues in education. But then I got divorced and I had to go to work. And
that changed your life?
Yeah, so I didn't have time to be a real political activist like I did before.
So did you start right away taking pictures of women in politics, or what did you, how did you get into that part of it?
Well, the way I started was that a woman producer who admired my work asked me to be a still photographer on a documentary about women in politics that was made for PBS. So very naively, I came to Washington, D.C. The only name I knew was Bella Abzug. She wasn't even holding office at the time. And all of a sudden, I got this awakening. I was there when Pat Schroeder and Barbara Mikulski were interviewed. So, and what I heard these women saying, it just sort of fired me up again.
So what happened was that two things came together, your previous interest in politics and your kind of inherited interest in photography.
Right.
Okay, well, why don't we take a look at some of the pictures that you've done, and I think we're going to start with a picture of Congresswoman Lynn Martin of Illinois. And you tell me, what was the circumstance there?
Well, she was in her office dictating letters. She was telling us how much she liked her work. And of course, they have an enormous amount of mail. So that was taking time from the day. And I like it because her children are in the background there, and it's just real homey looking.
Now, you actually, after you took a lot of these pictures, you began to, what did you do? You talked to the women, or you wrote to them, or?
Well, what I did was, when I had finished doing a lot of this work, and I started doing proof prints and putting them up in my home, all around the walls, and I said, my gosh, look at what I have here. I didn't even realize how much I had. And I thought, well, I could do a book. So what I did was I sent questionnaires to some of the women along with their photographs. And of course, some answered and others didn't. In fact, some people, I got a call from a press secretary wanting to know if they could send me their photograph from my book.
That's kind of an insult. Let's look at another picture. I think you have one here of that we would recognize. Let's see now.
Well, that's Lynn Martin as well.
That's her again.
And that was actually the same day. And this was at a press conference right after the ERA was defeated the last time in 1983. And she's just real angry. There had been all kinds of political maneuvering, and the women are just, you can see on their faces how disappointed the women
They all
are.
look very let down. That's right. I was thinking the next one was going to be a lady with a hat on. Ah, there it is.
I love this one. I like to call this one Bella Hugs a Lookalike.
Who is Bella Abzug actually hugging there, do you know?
I think it's not Curtis Collins, Ari Taylor, who was a state legislator from Colorado.
Is that at the same ERA convention?
No, this was in San Diego at the convention for state legislators, sponsored by the Center for American Women in Politics at Rutgers University.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's look at the next one.
Now, this is a defeat of the ERA. That's the same day at this press conference. And that's Mary Rose Ocher on the left, and again, Barbara Mikulski.
Now, Mary Rose Ocher is a congresswoman, and Barbara Mikulski at that time...
She was a congresswoman as well from Maryland.
And now she's the senator
yeah.
from Maryland. And she looks pretty formidable there.
Mm-hmm.
Is she?
I think she is. I think she is, yeah.
Okay, now we have a possible presidential candidate coming up here.
This is Pat Schroeder in her office, and very relaxed. Prior to doing an interview for this PBS documentary.
Do you think she might run for president?
I hope she does.
You do hope she does?
I think the women need to get out there and tell their story.
Do you think she'd be a good candidate?
Yeah, I do. I definitely do. I think she's forthright. She comes out there and tells it like it is. I think that's one of the things that women bring to the political theater is that they haven't become so jaded. They talk more candidly. They're more open. And I think Pat Schroeder would be very refreshing on the political scene.
What chance do you think she would have to win the presidency in this day and age?
Well, I don't give her much chance to win the nomination, actually.
You don't?
Not the way politics are played.
You mean male politics?
Yeah. It's a man's world. Here in the United States, I think it's 4% of women hold political office. In a country like Sweden, 38% of women hold political office.
You mean 38% of those who are in office are women?
Mm-hmm, that's right.
Yeah, it is a very low percentage in this country, so a woman still has a real handicap in getting into political office.
Definitely, and it's much harder work.
We'll come back and discuss this a little further as we continue with Night Watch in a moment. We're talking with Pat Shaw about women in politics and her pictures of them. And I'd like to ask you a question about the next picture, which we're going to show you, which is, I believe, of a Colorado woman politician. Is that correct?
Oh, no, this lady is Gwen Cody. She was running for House of Delegates in Virginia.
Oh, Virginia. Okay, I'm just about 2,000 miles off.
Yeah, right, well.
One of the critics of the show that you have in Los Angeles said that picture was rather dark and foreboding. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't think so. I think it shows a woman's vanity. This woman was a toughie, and she was running against another woman at the time. But she's pulling her jacket down, and it may be the angle that I've shot her at, you know. I mean, she likes the image, I'm sure, of herself much better that's on the top of her car.
The smiling, happy image, not the determined woman image. But, of course, I guess one of the points that these pictures make is that you have to be a determined, hard-working woman to succeed in politics.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Your pictures seem to show women who are somewhat tired. Is it because they are women and have to work harder than men in politics, or do you think it's because politics itself is a rough life?
I think it's probably a combination of both. I think the women do work twice as hard as most of the men. They do their homework. They study up on the issues. They know their facts. They have to work twice as hard to raise money. And it's a time-consuming job. If anything, I saw when I was on the road that it's 12, 14-hour days. And maybe one thinks of Washington, you know, a political life is glamorous. but not for, I don't think it is for these women. And the meetings and the hearings and...
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, now we're going to take a look at a shot of another woman in politics here. And this woman has not, in recent years, been too successful in politics. This is Jane Byrne, the former mayor of Chicago. What kind of a person is she? I mean, from that picture, I can draw some conclusions, but what do you think?
Well, I think she's hard-nosed. I think she's, I mean, what I like about that photograph is her body language. How she's wrapped up, you know, and how her hands, you know, are stretched out like this. And I think she's pretty stressed. And she's tough.
Yeah, I get the impression that she's...
she runs the show.
She's saying, don't cross me. Well, that's probably an accurate portrayal, that picture. Now, we have some pictures here of women in politics, and I'm not sure who they are, so put them up and you tell me.
This is Betty Hoffman Bright, and that's in the state legislature in Iowa. And this picture, I think, really represents what women in politics is kind of about. It's the one woman, you know, nose to nose with these two guys. And it pretty much says it all about their life, at least in politics.
There are certain aspects of politics that are tough on women. It must be doubly tough if you're a black woman in politics.
This is Cardis Collins, who's a congresswoman from Illinois. And this was after a banquet. You know how many of those they've had, and trying to raise some money. And
tired at the end of a long day. She's tired.
She's not only a minority as a woman, she's a minority as a black woman. And it makes her battle twice as tough, I guess.
Now, this one?
This was at a convention. And these are three state legislators from Iowa. And they're sitting there, what they're doing is they're reading their schedule, you know, and having a drink and chit-chatting in this hotel lobby.
Would this be what you might call the beginnings of an old girl network?
I hope so. I definitely hope so.
You're pretty strong on this woman in politics business, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. In fact, I saw on television the National Women's Political Conference that they're having and had in Portland last weekend. I said, I wish I was there. I don't know what it is. They got me fired up again.
You should have been there because there were a lot of very active political women. Now we have, I think, one last picture, and I'm going to ask you to describe Geraldine Ferraro in your terms.
Well, I was happy to see her be a political candidate for the Democratic vice presidency. I think she's a very smart woman.
Do you think she was fairly treated?
Well, I don't know. I don't really know.
It's hard to say.
It's hard to say. I mean, she should have known what was going on in her own family.
It does seem that she was a little naive about some of the problems that she had to face. Let me ask you one last question. Is there some common thread that runs in your pictures of women in politics, that runs through them, that unites you and these women in some way?
Well, I think it's commitment. These women make a big commitment to do this public service. And I feel that I made a big commitment to keep this going. But I've sort of been beating this horse for about 5 years, and it takes commitment and struggle to achieve what you want.
And that's what most of these women are about.
I think so.
And you too.
I hope so.
Thank you very much, Pat Shaw, for being with us. And now we'll continue with Night Watch in just a moment.